Welcome back to In the Real. My name is Eric. I'm your host, as usual. It is a sunny, smoky day here up in the Midwest. It's interesting that we call it the Midwest. It's only midpoint to the west if you're traveling from the east. I suppose you could say it's Midwest when you leave the west, but aren't you heading east? Wouldn't it be mid-east? Kind of strange, I guess. I was thinking about that earlier today when I was trying to escape all of the other weird stuff happening in the world today. So, what to talk about? Last time we rapped a little bit about my Disney trip in April of this year, 2023. Good times there. Thank you for all of you who commented and listened to that rambling. Hopefully, it's helpful to somebody. There are economical opportunities. Hate to say discount opportunities, but lesser expensive opportunities if you can dig for them. So, yeah, I found one that seemed to work out well. Hoping with all the fun things going on in the world today, Disney's around in the next coming years, and been thinking about maybe repeating that trip. And with the financial state of our country here, things kind of not going so well, that it makes you a little bit leery about spending that kind of money. But it is what it is. I'm not here to talk about Disney today, so life is going on. Seeing all the stuff that's happening with I'm trying not to mention names here of companies and organizations, but the big companies that are taking a hit from teaming up with certain groups of people. And here we are in the epic Rainbow Month, which I'm going to be honest with you, I think is useless these days. It is literally a pandering month, and that it's sad. In my personal perspective, I honestly can't tell you what Pride Month is for. I don't understand the definition of it because it has nothing to do with my life. So I can be ignorant to that because I don't care about it. It means nothing to me. Same with Black History Month. It's pointless for me. I'm a little bit with Morgan Freeman on that. Black history is American history. It's world history. You're part of the world. You didn't have separate history. You were involved with every other aspect of the world. So your history is a history. Period. When we start segregating these groups into being special, that is when we are dividing our country. Let's knock that off. We have holidays that we celebrate in different religions. They commercially extend out by time. But I don't know what Kwanzaa decorations are. I don't know a lot about what I know a couple things about Jewish decorations for oh goodness, the name of the holiday escapes me. But that thing where the menorah is at, you know what I'm talking about. It's just not in the front of my mind, but I know it's around the same time as Christmas months and so forth. So those decorations are out there too, and it just isn't as big a deal, I guess, to decorate in some mass way. And let's be honest, America was developed into a Christian-based country, so that's definitely a more popular thing to celebrate. It's just logical. Now we try to strive to be universal, so as things come up, they're there. Okay, we move on. We're not trying to discount them, but just because the Christians for the Christmas holiday are going to spend more money than the Jewish people are for whatever that holiday is that I can't remember the name of right off the top of my head here. It doesn't reduce its importance to that community. That's just what it is. Nobody's trying to promote it or squash it down. That's not what's happening. So we're talking about individuals' choices in life, and yes, I call them choices. If you want to live differently and say you're born in a certain way, that's your problem, your business. I don't care. I believe what I believe. You believe what you believe. Move forward. But when it comes down to that situation, it's a personal thing, and it's your business. Keep it that way. We don't need a month to shove it in people's faces. Okay? And if you try to argue that out and justify it as going, well, non-alphabet people have the rest of the year. No, so do you. You're still here. You didn't just come up out of the ground for a month and then go back down. That's not what's happening. So, as far as I'm concerned, end this garbage. Done with it. It's causing problems more than it's doing any good now, particularly when we have things happening to our children. If we want to encourage society to progress into new things and in the way that's beneficial for all of humanity worldwide, the last thing you need to do is start pushing something that is not everybody. And you could say that just about everything. Well, all right. So let's see if we can't, talk this out a little bit. What do you have for, say, necessities in stores? Well, you need to buy clothes, you need to buy food, obtain those things. You can call them dry goods, other domestic products, and so forth. So that's what should be in stores, things you need. Well, of course, you can have your specialty shops. You have shops that sell suits. The Men's Warehouse, I don't know if they're still in business. Well, I don't know if they have women's stuff in there or not, but if you're a woman and you want to wear men's stuff, you can go there. Nobody's stopping you. Nobody cares. Go ahead. Well, you have all the other clothing stores, high-end ones, low-end ones. Okay, well, you have grocery stores, all kinds of those. You got high-end ones of those as well. So those are the things that are there. You can have areas that have special stuff, all right? But we need to be a bit conscientious on the effects it's going to have on influential people. Well, children are influential. Believe it or not, 25 and down, you're influential. And the younger you are, the more influential you are. You are easily swayed into things. You don't have to be told things. You can just have something brought to you in a way that piques your interest, and as a child, you just, yeah, that's cool, I like that. Well, you don't even know what all that means and the behind it and the repercussions, the consequences. And consequences are good and bad. You don't understand all those things till you start getting older. And unfortunately, you're never going to understand those things until post-puberty. And so you're going to have to go through that. And believe it or not, every human being that has been a child, which is all of us, feels uncomfortable, awkward, strange, going through puberty, even just before it. And if you just let it be, trust me, when you come out the other side, you're going to be just fine. There are masculine men and effeminate men and everything in between. There are feminine women and masculine women and everything in between. You can be all of that and still be what you are as an adult. You're going to be fine. Everybody accepts you for what you are. And once you're old enough to make decisions about yourself, hey, more power to you. But up until that point, you don't even need to worry about it. You've got so many other things that you need to concern yourself with, which is your future in your life, on how you're going to be a productive member to society as well as yourself. Well, that doesn't, all that other stuff doesn't have to come into play unless you make it. And, without being cold about it, it's going to sound cold. Don't make it matter. Just move on. All right. Well, now if we're thinking about those along those lines, parents have that responsibility with their children. Why can't we just leave that there? Leave it alone. I'll raise my child my way. You raise yours your way. And that's that. So then when we send our children to this place in which they are congregating together, we need to have a basis that is effective for everybody. All right? Well, what does that consist of? Well, you're there to learn, so how about we educate you? America used to be in a place that strived to be better with education, try to move forward and get on top. And I think we're at the bottom. What are we teaching this inappropriate material in elementary schools all the way up to high school? That doesn't belong there. I saw a story on one of the YouTube channels here about, I don't remember if it was a middle school or a high school, but a math class was, a teacher in a math class was forcing the students to watch some Pride stuff. I'm sorry, that has nothing to do with math. If you can't teach the math, you don't need to be there. Get a teacher in there that knows how to teach math. Okay? That's what they're there for. When we start taking Pride Month and shoving the things that matter to everybody to the side and start teaching about the, I'm going to say 1% of the population's choices on what they do with what they do, that's not benefiting everybody. It just isn't. That's you can teach that stuff exists in like a social studies class because you're learning about social events. Well, you can talk about those things, but teaching people how to be this or that or whatever, that's not what we do. Okay, we're not, if you think about things in very simple ways, and I'm kind of getting off track. I'm going to skip that. I'm going to come back to that for a minute. Let's stick to the school thing here. From the beginning, you need to understand what your basic school education is all about. It's learning how to learn and use your brain and think critically and be able to work with different problems in different ways. That's what you're learning how to do. The stuff you're learning is what you're using to develop those processes. And some of that stuff is vitally important. Some is very important. Some of it not so important. But it gets you someplace. And that's what's important to learn. So while the kids are in school, how about you just teach them how to read and how to write and how to do math, science, participate in different sports, get some exercise throughout the day. Social studies, geography, and history. You cannot understand how important history is until you're an adult. And as a child, if you're not exposed to such things, you don't understand why having some of the thoughts you might naturally have are a bad thing. Some of those thoughts you naturally have come down to being aggressive towards other human beings. We are nothing more than an animal, but you have to learn how acting like one is not appropriate. And you're not going to do that if you don't see in history how people brutally acted like an animal and it didn't work out well, and understand why it was a bad thing. Okay. So let's back up here. Reading and writing. Well, reading, obviously, you need to know how to read stuff. Handwriting skills, those are important. Not just so that you can write a letter by hand, but trust me, if things go belly up someday, you might be reverting back to like pencils and pens and paper. So you may want to know how to do that. So why are we giving children tablets and electronic devices in elementary school? Granted, they probably know how to use them because poor parenting, early on. But we should be getting away from that. Let's get back to the basics in elementary school. Writing by hand. Learn how to do that skill. It helps you understand reading and grammar. It helps you understand stories and where to put things in the stories, subjects, and understanding what pronouns really mean. Sorry. You want to be a they or a them? First of all, I'm not even going to talk about you to somebody else, so addressing you as in your pronoun isn't going to come into play. So it doesn't matter to me what you want to be referred to, and you're not even going to be there when I do refer to you. So don't care. All right? And if you want that pronoun, and if you don't understand that those pronouns don't refer to an individual in the way you want it to be, then you're going to think you can do something with that, and you just can't. It doesn't work that way. Our society will function when we all understand what things mean. Okay? If you want to wake up one day and believe the sky is no longer blue, it's yellow, that's your business. But everybody else is going to understand it's blue. Period. As a matter of fact, I could honestly tell you the sky isn't blue. Technically, it isn't a color. It's just reflecting and refracting light in certain ways to form a color. It's not actually colored blue. If it was, it'd be blue at night. But it's not. And we could go back and forth all day on that, but yeah, it all depends upon your perspective. And that's kind of what we're coming down to here. Live your life how you want to. Nobody cares. I can tell you that straight up, honest, bottom line, no matter who you support politically and who you support as an individual and what you care about in the world, nobody cares about what somebody else wants to do with their life and their personal choices. Okay? If you tell me you care, I'm saying you're a liar. I don't want you to care about me. No. Stay away from me. That's what I want you to do. Stay away from me, stay out of my way, leave me alone. If I want help, I'll decide who I want help from. And I can guarantee you it's not going to be the person hopping up and down, screaming, begging to give help. No, there's something wrong with you. You've got too much time on your hands to be standing around begging to help people that you have no business helping anyway. Okay? That's the way I look at it. But yeah, that, my opinion, is back to elementary school, doing things by hand. Doing math problems by hand. You need to develop these skills. We are failing the generations that are coming up now. We have failed them, I should say. We need to get this back on track because we're going to have a good 40, 50 years here with a bunch of adults trying to run the country. It's already starting to happen. And it's going to go down. If our country gets weak enough, trust me, people are going to come over here and take it. They're already coming across that border. They know they can take this place over. Those people coming across here that you're all bleeding hearts for, they don't care about you. They will take you down in a heartbeat and take this land away from us and conquer everything. See, things happen differently than you expect. Now, I don't know if that's the plan or what's going on there, but I was in the military. I understand being strategic about stuff. So, yeah. So let's consider that, people. Let's try to make steps going forward. You want to be an LGBTQ plus alphabet XYZ, whatever the hell you want, you go right ahead and do your thing. But keep it to yourself. Stop promoting it. Stop trying to recruit people. Stop trying to sell it like it's something great. If it's great for you, that's where it stays. If you need other people's approval, then you might want to rethink what you're doing and why. And I know social media really makes that tough. Because if you're not getting likes and thumbs up on your garbage, then, oh, I'm worthless. No, you're not. Go make something of yourself. So, where should we go from here? The brewery company that lost a lot of money. And the multi-sales outlet with the big red bullseye, they've lost a lot of money. And now we've got some other companies trying to make decisions that are really getting difficult. And something that I want to point out is people have decided, all right, if you're going to do stuff like this for whatever reasons they feel is appropriate, I'm not going to buy your products. I'm not going to shop at your place because I don't need to. That's all that's happened. Well, enough people have done that to make an impact. You can call it a boycott. It doesn't matter. The bottom line is when people decide they're going to spend their money someplace else, that will harm a business. And what are you in business for? For politics? Or are you in business to make money? You should think about that. Well, after one example, you figure, well, we'll get a little risky. 2 examples. I think the next people that are even considering that should go, you know what, forget this. Let's just back up this train, let all the politics off, and let's continue on without it because this is just not going to work out because you're going to get nailed from both sides. And we're seeing that with the red bullseye people. So the people that impacted them off the start decided not to spend their money anymore. And so they decided, you know what, we better try to pacify the situation. We got the Pixie Month coming up here. I don't know if that would be a bad term, calling it a Pixie Month. I don't know. I don't mean anything by it. Just trying not to label things. But we'll call it the Pride Month, the Rainbow Month. That coming up, the Red Bullseye people tried to, pacify things a little bit. And really, the biggest complaints people were having is like, stop going after the kids with this garbage that's just inappropriate for children. And so I guess they tried to do that. And then the side of the fence that feels shunned gets all bent out of shape. Well, understand something. It's a business. If there are enough of you to help them sustain their business, then go spend your money there. But you're not. And that's because there's so few of you. And so who's really going to matter to a business? Well, the people who spend the money there. That's who matters. And that can be anybody. And you can still go there and spend your money there. But you don't have to either. And that's the choice that's being made here. It has nothing to do with trying to suppress or oppress you or taking rights. You have all the rights in the world. Nobody's taking anything from you. Just because you're not on the stage being recognized, too bad. Grow up. But instead, what do? These people are calling in harmful threats. Now, if you look at the 2 reactions that are happening, which one is more about minding one's own business? I'd say the people who chose not to spend their money there anymore. They're like, all right, well, I'll take my business elsewhere because that's my business. And what are you doing? Trying to force them to do something that their business has chosen not to do. Well, I'm sorry. I cannot force the gas station down the street to start selling mochi donuts because I like them. Maybe the market's not good enough there. And so if I start calling in, harmful threats to this business because they won't do that, that's not going to vote well for me. Because people are going to go, oh, you have a problem. That's all that's coming down to it. And it's unfortunate. If the people involved with doing such harmful acts would grow up and just understand, you know what? We're not going to let that take us down. We're going to still do our thing and move forward. Hey, no harm done. And let's look at the products that really were there. There was a name of a book about, and I might butcher this because I really don't know much about it. I think it was like Binary, and it was in an age group of like 4 to 8 or 8 to 10 or some weird thing like that. I don't know why that's a story for a child. They don't understand what all that stuff is at that age. They barely understand it when they're a teenager. But you're promoting it to these youngsters. And I understand they're not buying it. The parents are. And I'm sorry, you're an idiot if you're doing that. If you really support freedoms, why don't you let your children decide what they want when they're an adult? Before that time, why don't you be a parent and just help guide them to a stable life? And stop making them worry about these things that don't matter. Leave them be. Well, I guess if you're a poor parent, you don't understand that, but it is what it is. But stuff like that and the swimsuits that were made for men trying to represent them as females, to me, this is just stuff that is not an everyday thing for people to need. And that's more of a specialty item. Very specialty item. I don't know if anybody remembers this. I actually had this example in this conversation with somebody else a couple days ago. I don't know how many of you remember video stores. We used to have the video stores all over the place. You can go and rent videotapes, VHS tapes, and that early on, beta tapes. It came down to laser discs and then DVDs, blockbusters, things like that. Well, in the early times, before the internet, if you wanted any kind of XXX rated items, adult items, they would be in these stores. And do you know where they kept those things? It wasn't out on the shelf alphabetical where anybody and everybody could see them. They put them in a room blocked off by curtains or a door of some kind. So it was only for the eyes in which it was appropriate to see it. Now, if you wanted to take that home and show your children, you most certainly could. That's your problem. But the responsibility of the store was not to promote that stuff to people who didn't want it promoted to them. They could have very well just left it out. Now, I don't know what the laws were and stuff like that, but you can bet people would be upset. And now, when you take this example with the Red Bullseye place, people were upset. So here's an idea. Why don't you take all that garbage, stuff, whatever you want to call it, and stick it in a private room where only the people that are interested in it will go and get it? Seems logical to me. We have places here called Fleet Farm. They sell farming goods, a lot of animal stuff, furniture, hardware, tools, holiday stuff, kids' toys. I think they got snacks and stuff there. Clothing items. Yes, they have food. That's right. Sporting goods. All kinds of sporting goods. To include firearms. Now, do you think the firearms are just out there in the open? Pick and choose what you want from a box on the shelf? No. They're in secured locations for a reason. Well, stuff like this that panders to a very select group of people should probably be put off to the side so that it doesn't offend anybody. At the doorway coming in, probably not a good plan. So why not just have it in a little blocked off room? And people can go in there, shop around, look for what they want to find, and then they can sell it. And it's there. Now, it's not going to be in front of the doorway, and so be it. It is what it is. They used to have these risque magazines, Playboy and Hustler and things like that, out on the magazine rack. Do you know what else they had on that magazine rack? Comic books and all this other stuff. So how did they divide that stuff out? They covered the magazines, except for the titles. At least the risque ones. So the title itself couldn't have anything in it or they'd have to cover that too, and then nobody would be able to read it. See, there are ways to do this that are good for society. And just because we've gotten to a point now where we can walk around with a phone in our hand and watch porn while we're having a business meeting on it, doesn't mean we should let go of everything. We need to force things back into their holes. Boy, that's just a bad analogy with the stuff that I'm currently talking about. We need to force things back into where it's appropriate, and we need to consider what those things are. I mean, look what happened at the White House over the weekend. That is just horrible. I don't care who you are. All right, this yo-yo goes to the leadership of our country, and this shows you how well educated this person is, which is not well, by the way. Their education is poor. You don't go to the leadership of your entire country and act like an idiot like that. You just don't. I don't care if you're a man or a woman. You don't act like that there. You embarrassed yourself. You embarrassed everybody in this country, the people that support you and the people that don't support you, which, since we're in a free country, guess what? You got both sides of those fences too. You embarrassed all of us. And the sad part is you don't care. You justify it away, and that shows your low-level maturity. And why is that there? Poor parenting from a poor society that just keeps going down a damn hill. And why? Because everybody's just letting it. Nobody's going, how can I be better? No, they're just going, how can I get clicks? This is just ridiculous. I like the humor in it all when the that idiot spokesperson for the administration comes on and says, yeah, they're never going to be invited here again. Oh, really? How many repeats do people get? You know, I don't know, but yeah, it's not good. We shouldn't even have that stupid flag, and I do think it's stupid because I think they changed it to try to rope in pedophiles. What is wrong with people? It's unbelievable. Even if that wasn't there and it was just the standard pride flag, it should not be at our nation's capital. That is not representing everybody. You know what represents everybody? Our country's flag. That represents everybody here. So they're already represented in that. And so what do? We segregate, make them more special. Well, that's not good. It just isn't. I watched this video again today, or not again, another video I watched. Let's speak this correctly, about this person saying all white people are bad, and then focused white men are bad. It's like, what are you doing? If you keep pushing this such narrative, the white people will become oppressed, and guess what? They will then become an oppressed community. Well, then didn't you just develop something that you're trying to not have continue in the world? Communities that are being oppressed because of their skin color? That is what racism is. And if I don't like somebody because they're an a-hole, it has nothing to do with their skin color. And just because they would happen to be of some particular ethnic background, it doesn't just automatically become that. And I'll be honest, I judge people based on how they act. I don't care anything else about you. Nothing. The way you act is what you get judged on. And I will judge you every single day. I see you. I judge everybody. That's a personal perspective that I will be upfront with everybody. You judge people. Everybody judges people. That's a natural human instinct to have judgment and you judge people. That's what keeps you alive, is your judgment. There's nothing wrong with judging situations, judging somebody on their conduct. You have to accept the fact, though, you could be wrong. So don't go pushing your judgment as if that's the facts and the truths. That's the important part. And when we go around telling people judging is wrong, that's how you're making a mistake. There's nothing wrong with judging people. Just accept that you could be wrong. Doesn't make you right. So yeah, little advice for you. Embrace judgment. Just keep an open mind. So yeah. So let's see. We talked about the White House debacle. We've talked a little bit about this month's celebrations. Let's see. What else can we talk about here? Oh, Tucker Carlson. That's the guy. He's got 3 episodes out now. I've listened to him on Twitter. Seems to be, an informed person. He's got some information you'd probably never really hear about. Not going to go into too much about what he was talking about, but he, obviously he's a political person, and I don't know what he would consider himself, so I'm not even going to assume that he's centrist, liberal, conservative. I have no idea, and it doesn't matter to me. I don't care. If you're going to speak common sense, then that just makes sense to me. Doesn't seem to try to persuade anybody to think anything either. He just talks about information, asks questions about it, and says, "Hey, you might want to think about this," which is a good way to do things. I'll take this whole the 28th Amendment. They're talking about trying to ban certain firearms and whatnot. You do not want that to happen. I don't care if you're against or for firearms. You never, ever want rights taken away from you, even if you're not using them. Just because you don't doesn't mean other people don't. And yeah, I know people come in and say, "Oh, the mass murders and the gun violence and blah, blah, blah." What do you think the laws do? The laws are for people who are law-abiding. Criminals are not law-abiding. We are not the only country that has firearms. So the criminals will still get them by means of illegal processes. You're not going to stop that. The only thing you will prevent by banning any firearms is law-abiding citizens won't have them. Not the criminals. They will still have them. You need to think past your own brain sometimes. Things need to be done about the criminals committing crimes with firearms. Don't get me wrong. And it can start with not punishing the innocent people who stop them with firearms. We need to understand where that comes from. There's been videos on stuff like that too on YouTube. It's maybe Twitter. I'm not really sure. I think it's probably more Twitter. I think YouTube would have a problem with that. But it's some people definitely don't do the right things just by the video, and I hate looking at just clips and trying to judge situations because you don't know what happened before or even after. You just don't know. So it's hard to look at a situation that's 12 seconds and go, "Ooh, that was a bad thing." Well, you don't know what happened beforehand. So, but you can see things and go, I wonder how that's going to turn out, kind of deal, But the bottom line is, look at the freedom of speech stuff. You do not want words banned. You don't want things labeled as things that can be completely subjective to try to ban them when it comes to speech. You never want that. If you're comfortable with your choices, even if you can't defend them well, you don't want things banned. Learn how to defend them correctly, and maybe you'll learn that your position isn't the best one. Doesn't mean you have to change it. If it works for you, you're happy with it, maybe find a better reason. The one you're trying to argue may not be right. And that's okay. But that's where the acceptance of the other side of the fence comes in. And we're not doing that because starting from early school age and our poor parenting skills right now, we're not encouraging that kind of behavior. Trust me, when I have conversations with people about anything, there are things I hear that just are irritating, and I just can't believe it. When I don't get out much and I don't talk to many people in person, I'm just not that kind of person to do that. I'm not very social. But whenever certain conversations come up and I hear certain things like, oh, this is so offensive to me, and blah, 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 that hearing that actual word with something, this offends me or this is offensive, that person then is an irritation to me. Because I've heard a few people say this, and it just makes really good sense. How arrogant are you to think you won't be irritated by something somebody says? I mean, I am saying it right now. People irritate me. Well, I don't get upset. I'm done with this conversation. I'm going to go away, or I don't say anything. But to be offended and to be upset that you get offended, hey, you know what? You should. If you're going to get offended by something, good for you. You know what? That's just telling you something about you. It's not about the person. It's you. But to hold them in some kind of contempt, who do you think you are? Sorry, life is not all butterflies and sunshine for you. And we need to understand that. You're not the only person on this planet. And you're not the only person that needs to be satisfied here. And guess what? That means sometimes, maybe a lot of the times, you're not going to be happy. It's just the way that it is. And we need to get back to that stuff. Quit being afraid of having your feelings hurt. You'll live. I think it was Bill Burr. He had had a good joke about that. That's what bullying was good for, toughening you up. Not that I'm advocating people to bully people. It's just rude and mean, and definitely not necessary. You need to teach your kids not to do that. But Tucker Carlson's had some interesting things. You do not want any weapons banned. And let me tell you, any government that wants to do something such as that is not a government you want. Your leadership should never, ever be willing to take away rights you have. They should be willing to do things to support those rights and stop the bad behavior with the rights. That's good leadership. That's what's important. That's leadership for the people. Because once they take those away, you're never getting them back. And why would a government be afraid so much that their citizens could defend themselves, even aggressively if necessary, if they were doing good for the citizens? What are you afraid of? If you're afraid of offending 50 people because they don't like the way a firearm looks, and they think it's just some big deal because it looks like something the military has, even though it's not the same thing, why? You should be looking at them and say, listen, you need education. We're not going to do this banning thing. We're not going to take rights away. We are going to make sure the people who utilize firearms in criminal behavior are punished to the full extent of the law. That's what they should be doing. Making those laws tougher. The people that actually really don't like firearms should be taking education classes. Learn about what the people that are law-abiding know. They're not just out there, doing the Yosemite Sam business. That's not a law-abiding citizen. That's a criminal. There are differences. I encouraged some people in the past that years ago when firearm debates were coming up. I'll tell you the story. There's some segments and years in between, but a few things that have come up. I was working in Arlington, Virginia, and there was going to be some big demonstration at around Capitol Hill, I think it was, about firearms. And so the hotel I was living in at the time was just packed full of people with these signs and whatnot. And I was like, oh wow, this is interesting. And I was waiting for my transportation to take me to work, and there was this family, children, and assuming mom and dad. And I was like, hey, what's going on? And so they told me about this firearm demonstration and whatnot, and I'm like, oh, well, what's that all about, kind of business? And I want to say some weird thing had just taken place someplace with a firearm, and so everybody's got their panties in a bunch, and so they started telling me about this situation. I can't remember what it was. It wasn't the Vegas guy, but it was something weird like that, and I was like, oh, okay. Like, so what are you demonstrating for then? What's the purpose? To ban automatic weapons, they said. I was like, oh. Well, my transportation hadn't come yet. And I decided, I wasn't trying to be a jerk or anything, but I wanted to understand what they understood about firearms. So I asked them, I said, so what's an automatic weapon? And they said it's a machine gun. I said, oh, okay. Well, can you give me more information about that? I'm going verbatim here. I don't remember the exact conversation, but it was along these lines. And they're like, well, it's those, they fire a lot of bullets really fast with those, 50 round magazine or clips, they call it. And I'm like, oh, okay, so already I know they don't know what they're talking about. And I'm like, oh. I'm like, well, so the general public cannot purchase machine guns. And the lady, mom, wife, whatever she was, she goes, I've seen them. I've seen people hunting with them. And so I asked, you mean the ones that look like the military guns? She goes, yeah. I'm like, those aren't machine guns. I'm like, a machine gun is typically something that fires hundreds of rounds a minute, big mounted, they're heavy, they're big. And civilians can't own those and buy those. What you're talking about is just a rifle. And the ones that civilians can get are not automatic. Those are also already illegal. So if somebody's been utilizing one, they're a criminal and bought one illegally. And there was some other words exchanged after that. And I think they said, well, the handguns that are automatic as well. I'm like, well, they call them automatics, but it's just about the loading system. It has nothing to do with them just firing bullet after bullet. So we had some other, back and forth about it. And then my ride came. I'm like, hey, well, you guys be safe, have fun, and I left. It's like, okay, so these people are protesting against something they don't even know anything about. It's like, you probably should learn something first before you think what it is you're yelling about. The government doesn't care if you're yelling about what you know about or not, but if they see an opportunity to take away a right you have, they'll go for that. It's just the way that it is. Your Second Amendment rights are there for you to defend yourself, even against your own government. Because if they start coming and trying to do things that they shouldn't be doing, that's where your militia stands up and goes, you're done. We need better leadership. And you're not going to be able to do that with cotton balls. Okay? They are well armed. All right? And we already are not. So you don't want to get rid of anything you might be able to utilize for a good reason in the future. Okay? So you have to consider that. And violence is never the way to do anything. until it is. That's the military thing. Yeah, you don't need to be violent until you have to, and that's usually pretty far down the road. So, sometime later, working at another location, can't remember where it was, but it was actually, we were in a VA hospital. A big group of us with this company, another company I was working for. And I think that's when the guy in Vegas from his hotel room was, picking people off in a crowd somewhere. And we're sitting around chit-chatting about this and that and everything else. And this one particular person chimed up and said, yeah, I think we should get rid of all firearms and blah, blah, blah. And I had asked, well, why do you think that? And I was like, well, because people are taking these things and doing this and everything else, and nobody needs to hunt with these things. That was her argument there. And I had asked her, what about the firearms is such a big problem that, that you have something against it? And she says, well, I don't like them. And why do we have these automatic weapons that can fire so many rounds so fast? And it's like, okay, well, the military only has those. So again, another example, somebody didn't understand what civilians can own compared to the military. And so once I taught her about that, she was like, oh, I didn't know that. I'm like, yeah. She asked how I knew, and then I was answering. I'm like, well, I was in the military, and I have a few firearms, and I know what my limitations are and what I can and cannot own. And trust me, I love to have a fully automatic firearm because they're fun to fire. But unless I have some special licensing in which they almost come and check you out in ways you don't want, there's no way I can purchase one. There's no way. It's impossible. So people just don't get these things unless it's usually through illegal means. And we got, talking further about, well, why do people need these firearms? Any of them, with 20 round, 50 round magazines. Like, well, people can fire things pretty quickly anyway. So even if it's got 10, well, I can have 10 magazines and I can reload pretty fast. So it doesn't really matter. Has nothing to do with anything. And after a while, that thing gets pretty heavy. So trust me, people aren't trying to walk around with 100-round magazines. That's just silly. For competitions, it's helpful, but not for everyday things. So then she understood some stuff about that. And I said, do you understand what the Second Amendment says and what it's for? And she didn't even understand what that it was. She just thought it was the right to bear arms. I'm like, well, that's part of it. And we looked it up online and read through it all. And she goes, oh, I had no idea all this other stuff in there was about the militia and to stand up against government when government tries to take too much power and all this other business. And you should look that up. I'm going verbatim here, so I'm probably poorly representing that. But check it out. Read it. Look up the words in a dictionary. Understand what it means. It is for your safety. And yes, there are people abusing that and doing bad things with it. And those are the people we need to take care of, but not everybody else, not you. So once we had talked a little bit about that and I explained to her, I said, this is your responsibility as well as a right to defend your country against your own government when it is necessary. And trust me, what you can have as a civilian is nothing compared to what they already have. So you don't want to lose anything. You're already behind. By the end of that week, she had come over to me and she goes, after you were telling me about all these things about, the Second Amendment and firearms, she goes, I'm actually rethinking my position on that. I have to be honest, I am afraid of guns, but, maybe for the wrong reasons. Maybe there's a better way to me to look at this. And so I wanted to say thank you. I appreciate it. And I was like, hey, no problem. I wasn't trying to convince you of something or change your mind or anything. I just wanted to educate you. And she goes, no, that was a good idea. I needed that, and it's probably important. I was like, all right, well, hey, good for you. And I've had some people come with me shooting that were legitimately afraid of firearms. And after a few shots, they're like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. It's frightening and amazing. They once they have the safety stuff down, they understand this is just a tool. It's like a toaster. You are in control of it. It isn't just going to turn around and start doing things to you. It is a nothing. It's all the person. Then they understand. It's like, wow, this is a powerful tool in your hand. And that's all that it is. That's literally all it is. And they had fun. They're not going to go out and buy one. They don't want that, but I've had people sit down and go through the material that I've had on firearm safety classes and talked about legalities and whatnot. And, they've changed their perspective, I'll say, but it's not that they're any more interested in owning one or carrying one. So, but education's important, people. Started this conversation around that, really. Need to learn about stuff. If I looked at our Constitution and started finding things, I don't use this and I don't use that and I don't care about this, and said, let's get rid of this. Well, I'm just one person. There could be 50% of the country that feels the exact same way I do, but that doesn't mean we should get rid of those rights. Ever. We should be fighting for more rights, less government. You know what? You're taking my money and you're wasting it. You're doing absolutely no good for the education in our country. And somehow, every one of you voted people are getting filthy rich. And I'm not, but I'm the one working for it. Why are my roads a mess? Why don't I have a bigger police force that are paid sufficiently, by the way? I got invited to a state trooper camp once, and I almost went the day of. I sat down and researched their top pay, and I was like, there ain't no way I'd even do that as a starting pay. Nonetheless, after 6 years being a top pay, nuh-uh, forget it. And that was, over a decade ago. And nowadays, how bad stuff is, no. The criminals aren't getting punished. I don't care how old you are. I don't care what kind of crap parents you have. When you're being bombarded with stupidity in criminal conduct, you're going to push it. We're human beings. That's all we ever do until we get old enough to go, you know what? This is stupid. But if that's your life has been all that never comes to mind. You look at everybody that's doing well as an enemy and taking things from you, and you don't do anything to fix yourself. Well, at a young age, it's always like that every day. You don't have that thought process yet, but I just want this and that because I feel like I deserve it. That entitlement garbage. And if you just fuel that, then you're going to have nothing but a monument of stupidity coming up. And eventually that stupidity will be looking to run the country. And then it just gets worse. So, hopefully you can consider that stuff. I'm going to check out here. I'll remind you, as I always do, I'm the only a-hole on this channel, so don't be one in the comments. Be constructive if you want to leave one, and I encourage you to leave a comment. I understand this is a one-way conversation, but there's no need to be rude. Share it with your friends. I'll try to definitely post some more on some other topics. Maybe give some subject and topic ideas for me to talk about from my, and I understand this is just my perspective. I try to be as centered as I can. I do have my personal opinions, and I try not to enforce them on people, but I do encourage to, understand that it might not be an interest of yours. It might not be something you care about or want, but it doesn't mean other people don't. So just leave it alone if it's not your business. And don't try to push your business on other people. Don't hurt the kids, don't harm them, protect your family, and protect other people that need it. But don't push your beliefs on others. That's not a place to go. I mean, I've talked about it in the past a few times, like my perspective on religion. I don't buy any of that at all. I'm not even interested in being labeled those other things like atheists, and there's another one out there too. I don't remember what it was, but I don't even buy that garbage. No. I don't believe in any of it, but at the same time, as a scientist, I can tell you it doesn't mean I'm right. Hey, there's the possibility I could be wrong, but I'm never going to stop questioning it. And because I can question it, and because I can say, you know what, it just doesn't look like it's there, I don't buy it. But if you're going to believe it, you go right ahead. That's fine. Don't try to sell me either. I'm not interested. I've talked to people about their beliefs, not just Christianity, other ones too. It's interesting to learn about it, but that's on my own time. That's for me, my business. So I'm not going to convince you that what you're doing isn't correct. That's not the thing. You do your thing. So, all right, people, I appreciate your time. If you got through this, I start jabbering away here and then I get out of hand. So before I continue that, I'm gonna cut this off here. We'll see you next time. This is Eric for In the Real. You enjoy the rest of your day.